plant people, welcome back to Reading Mindfully. My name is Yana, and today we are talking about some unpopular opinions. So let's just get into it. Hey guys, like I said, so today I'm giving you, or we're discussing some unpopular plant opinions, and in the words of Arvin Alano, not that anybody asked, but I'm giving you my opinions. And so let's just get into the first one. And my first opinion is that humidity is blindly recommended. And I don't know what happened or who started this thing about humidity, but now every time something's happening with a plant, if a plant's not doing well, the first thing that someone recommends is increasing the humidity. And I'm just like, what happened to the days where you would just ask the person what's wrong with their plant? If the plant's getting enough light, if the plant is getting enough water, if there's enough moisture. Every time something's wrong with the plant, or even like when I tell you guys about my struggle plants, everyone's just like, oh, just increase the humidity, increase the humidity, increase the humidity. And I'm just like, guys, if I increase my humidity anymore, I would have mold in my house. I do not want mold in my house, and that is why I keep my humidity, I try to keep it under 70%. Now, some people are go to extreme levels where they're trying to increase it to 80% and 90%. And let me tell you, that in a home is dangerous. You're going to develop mold, and like I said in my humidity video, it messes up your home. You're going to you can develop mold in the walls, on the walls, in the floors, like under your floors. You can develop mold and stuff on your furniture. That happened to me last year when I was having my mold issues with my apartment complex. I was developing molds on the walls, on my furniture, and it's just not good. The mold develops everywhere, and so you really have to be careful of not increasing your humidity too high. And if you're going to increase your humidity, make sure you have some air circulation. But I just noticed that a lot of people, when plants aren't doing well, they just automatically say to increase the humidity without even seeing what other things are happening with the plant. The plant has bacterial issues, fungal issues. So I feel like we just have to do a little bit more investigation work or some diagnosis before we just automatically assume that you just need to increase your humidity, because it could be something else. Number 2, along with humidity, is misting your plants. I feel like misting honestly does more harm than good. In my opinion, I feel like I personally don't miss my plants, and the reason why I don't miss my plants is because you can have bacterial issues, you can have fungal issues, and I try to avoid that as much as possible. And in my opinion, I think it's better to mist. If you have to mist your plants, I think it's just better if you mist the area around your plants, so that way the mist is in the air and it's not falling on your plants. Again, if you do mist your plants, make sure that your plant leaves dry throughout the day. So maybe if you mist in the morning, so that way you give it enough time to dry, or you put a fan on to make sure that your leaves dry if you have to mist your plants. But I feel like using a humidifier is better, or even if you use like vases or bowls of water to sit around, that's better. But I just personally I don't mist my plants. And as well as, I don't feel like misting actually does that much of a difference. I mean, you could even try it yourself. Just mist your plants and get a hygrometer to see, if it actually does some difference. I mean, I've done it before and I've only seen like a 2 to 3% difference. And so I just feel like misting is not really worth the risk of having bacteria or fungal infections. Just because I've tried it and I've looked at my hygrometer and I've seen a difference. As you can see, my humidity is pretty high right now. It was at 68%, but it could also be higher because I'm also holding it. But my humidity is pretty high, so that's why I don't always just want to increase my humidity. I try to keep it under 70%, and it's been pretty comfortable. As well as it's not. Going back to humidity, it's not comfortable living in a humid household. It feels like you're walking through the rainforest. And if you guys have ever been to the aquarium or like the the zoo, where they have that section where it's like the rainforest, it's like hot and humid and sticky, and that's what your home will feel like if you keep bumping up the humidity and stuff like that. It's not comfortable. So opinion number 3 is that plants do well outside. And I know a lot of people get scared about putting your plants outside because of pests and bugs and animals, but honestly, my plants have grown so much like outside, it's really been worth putting them outside, even for them to just get a break and get some of that natural airflow, some natural sunlight. It gives my grow lights a break, so that my grow lights will hopefully have a longer shelf life or have a longer lifespan. But it just gives everything a break, so that way I can just like put them outside and not have to worry about them as much. And I really enjoy it. My plants really enjoy it. You can see like they come back in massive. And then I was at to worry about where I put them, but I just love putting them outside. Not to mention that if I have like a pest issue, that also helps putting them outside, because there are natural predators that will, attack the pests. So I love putting my plants outside. And going into pests, number 4 is pests are inevitable. You're not going to be able to just prevent pests from coming into your collection. They're plants. Plants naturally come with pests. And especially if you are underwater, you will likely have pests, namely spider mites, because spider mites are just attracted to plants that are underwater and stressed out. Same with thrips. If a plant is stressed out, you're more likely to have thrips. So if your plants are always stressed, they give off pheromones to attract these pests, and then that's inevitable. Now, you can do some preventive maintenance, go through weekly to spray your plant leaves. That's fine. I've also seen people like preventatively using like systemic granules, and that I don't really agree with, because if you use systemic is kind of like the last line of defense, other than you like bombing your house like using a pest bomb. But like systemic is like the last line of defense, so you don't want to just use that all the time, because you're effectively just putting that in the soil and making that suck up into the roots, into the plant leaves. But if you don't really have any pests, then there's no point of using that. And it's kind of like taking antibiotics when you're not sick. So it's just not really a good thing to do. And plus, sometimes those systemics kill off the good pests too, and your plants need those to grow well. They need like the microbes and everything. So I would be careful not to use those on a regular basis. And if you use it too much, you could also start to get those resistant strains of pests that, like, once you actually do have a pest situation, you might not even be able to use those systemics, because your plants have already been used to taking that up. So I would just be careful about using that stuff, and just wait until, or just hold off until you actually have like a bad infestation to use those granules. But the sprays, you can use the neem oil, the insecticidal soaps, and all that things like that. I would just be wary about using those granules all the time. Bottom watering versus top watering. Now, I don't know why this is really a debate. It's not really necessary to be a debate. I feel like bottom and top watering are the same thing. It just all comes down to convenience. Are you able to go around and pop, spray your plants by top watering? Or do you just want to sit them in the bin or the bathtub and have it, do it that way? But if you sit them in the bathtub or whatever, you still have to wait but 20 to 30 minutes for the water to absorb, versus just going around and, watering the plants. But I feel like it's just all convenience. What do you have time for? Unless you have plants that do not like their leaves to be wet, like Apicias, African violets. Those definitely need to be bottom watered, because when they get water on the leaves, they just do not like it. They get mushy and weird. And so there's certain plants that don't like their leaves to be wet, and that's when I could see like bottom watering being, more beneficial. But other than that, I just feel like they're the same. And like I said, I don't know why people debate, but I always see that on Facebook, and I'm just like, we could be talking about so many other things. I don't know. And the next one is underwatering is not better than overwatering. And I see people talking about this too. They're both not good. They're both not good. I mean, the thing that you want to aim for is like the sweet spot in the middle, because if you overwater your plants, you could develop, root rot, you could have yellow leaves, things like that. Or you can have like too much moisture, you can lead to bacteria and things like that, mold. You could also have fungus gnats. If you underwater your plants, you could have like spider mites, thrips, brown leaves, crisping, dried roots. So either way, you're kind of like moving to an extreme. You can also, if you're a chronic underwater, you could have curled leaves that never unfurl when you do water your plant. So I feel like either way, it's not good for the plant. You just want to kind of shoot in the middle, depending on whatever kind of plant you have. But I don't think one is better than the other, to be honest. They both aren't really good, especially if you're a long-term overwater or if you're a long-term underwater. It's not good. I mean, maybe once in a while if you overwater one time or 2 times, or if you underwater once or twice, but to be long-term or chronic is not good either way. The next one I feel like is my honest opinion, but I think that baby plants are like the gateway, like a gateway drug. And the reason why I say this is because baby plants are so small, you could just keep buying plants because they're so small. You can just fit them in your area, and it just leads you down a rabbit hole of buying a ton of plants that you don't need and that you will not have space for in the future. Why do I say that? Because baby plants get bigger. When those plants get bigger, then you're gonna be like, where do I put all these plants? Or baby plants lead you to buy all these shelves, and then next thing you know, you got hundreds of plants lining your shelves. And that's one of the reasons why I no longer use shelves, because when I had shelves, I was fitting a tiny plants onto every nook and cranny of my shelves, because I was like, oh, I have space here, I have space there, and I was trying to fit all these tiny pots because I had the space. And it just got to be ridiculous. So I try not to buy baby plants. If there is a plant that I really want and it's cheaper in a baby plant, then I will think about it and really think if I really want that plant. But other than that, I try to stay away from baby plants. I mean, I do love buying baby plants and watching them grow, but like I said, it's just a rabbit hole for me, and I know that if I go down that rabbit hole, my collection is big now, but my collection would be double if I bought baby plants, if that makes sense. And the next opinion I want to say is rescue plants, in my opinion, are not worth it. It is not worth it to have to rehab a plant. And I know a lot of people like to go rescue plants because they feel bad for the plant, the condition that the plant's in, or they love the feeling of rescuing a plant and bringing it back to health. But I'm telling you, it's not worth it, especially if you have plants that look like they could be rescued, but then you get them home and they have some kind of pest, or they have some kind of bacteria or fungal issue, and then now you introduce that into your plant collection. I just don't think it's worth it. I personally don't really like to rehab plants. It's not really like my favorite thing. Now, if I am importing and I really want a plant, then I will try my hardest to rehab. But I personally just don't like to go out and rehab plants. And the reason why I don't is because I already have a lot of plants. I have a huge collection, and I already have a lot of maintenance with the plants that I have, let alone bring in the plant that I need to nurse back to health. Like, I'm not about that. I do not like to rescue, but like I said, if you like to rescue plants, then that's fine, but I personally don't like to rescue plants, and I don't like to bring that in here because I don't know what's wrong with the plant, even if it just looks like it's just like a yellow leaf or two. Like sometimes I will, but I generally don't like to rescue plants. The next one I want to say is repot when it feels right for you. So a lot of people have a struggle with repotting, and I repot on a case-by-case basis. I mean, for the most part, I try to repot like a week after the plant comes into my care. But really, it could be any time. Like if I don't like the soil or the medium that plant came in, I will repot because I like my soil better than the soil that it came in, especially if it's like a peaty soil. I do not like peaty soils. My moisture meter doesn't read the peat soil very well, and so I will repot. If I'm in a pot shortage, I won't repot, obviously, but during the pandemic, there was no terracotta pots to be found, and so I couldn't repot my plants. So repotting is a case-by-case basis. It depends on what's happening, if I'm able to get pots, what the soil looks like. If the plant is overwatered, then I would definitely repot. But if the plant has been stressed, like if it just came from one place to the next place, like if it's been bouncing around, I won't repot because I don't want it to stress out. I don't want to stress the plant out any more than it's already been stressed out. And also, I repot all year round. I repot in the winter. I repot in the fall. I repot as much as I want to, really. And the reason is because my house is warm. I do keep my home on the warmer side, like it's like close to 70. So I feel like I can repot and my plants won't freak out in the winter. Now, if you keep your home's cooler, then I probably wouldn't repot, but I repot all year round and my plants seem to be fine with it. The next thing going along with that is I fertilize my plants as long as they're growing. So if they're growing in the wintertime, I'm still fertilizing. I'm still giving them what they need to grow. And so a lot of people say that you should fertilize between March and October, but I just fertilize all year round and my plants seem to be fine. But I also do a weaker solution, so that's why I ensure that my roots don't burn and that my plant doesn't freak out. But yeah, if you use a fertilizer, just make sure you go by the directions. And if you're even nervous about that, just dilute it to a weaker solution, about 1/4 of whatever it's calling for. And then that way you can fertilize your plants more often. The next one I'm going to say, and it's probably the cheap person coming out, but soil mediums with three or more ingredients are expensive, complicated, and it's just a lot. It's inconvenient. And what I mean by this is that when you have soil mediums that have 3, 4, 7 ingredients, that's a lot of soil medium. If you have to buy charcoal, peat, pumice, like perlite, that's a lot of ingredients. I don't even have all those ingredients in my area. My state doesn't even sell pumice rock. The last time we got pumice rock was when my mom brought it back from Georgia when she came back from her plant shopping trip. So we don't even get pumice rock in our area. We would have to travel to another state to get it, or I'd have to buy it online. And then the same with charcoal. We don't have that in our area, so it would be inconvenient for me to try to get multiple mediums, and that's another reason why I just do soil and perlite. Not to mention that it's a lot cheaper for me to just do soil and perlite. I mean, you can still make your soil mediums airy by just adding more perlite, but I don't feel like it's necessary to add like orchid bark and charcoal and pumice all in one. I mean, if you really want to, you can, but I just think it's not really necessary, and it just tends to be more expensive, especially if you do have more. I would say even more than 50 plants, it could be pretty expensive. And speaking about expensive plants give me anxiety. And I'm not knocking anybody who buys expensive plants. I'm not telling you how to spend your money, but I'm just telling you guys, expensive plants give me anxiety. And I'm just thinking, because I spent a whole bunch of money on that plant, I need that plant to survive. Like, I don't want anything to happen to that plant. And I don't know, I was just thinking one day, like, if I ever spent like $2,000 on a plant, like, I probably wouldn't even be able to work, because I would have to be here to make sure that the plant was okay, that the plant actually didn't get stolen out of my house. I definitely wouldn't be putting that plant outside to get snatched off my like patio. Like, I would have so much anxiety. I would have to get a better security system to make sure that people aren't taking my plants, especially because I have like maintenance and stuff come in my home. You know, when they're doing their inspections and things like that, I have people coming in my home. Now they do give you like a notice, but still, I just 2,000, and they might not know, but you never know if they're into plants. If they're like, ooh, look at that elbow, or look at that spirit of sanctity, that you never know. But like I said, the last video, they called me the plant lady, and you never know, they might be seeing what's in my collection to resell. But just having like expensive plants, like, I would have so much anxiety. Not to mention, I'd have to be eating rice and beans for like the next 6 months to try to pay that money back or try to recoup that money. So I don't know. And I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, just so I can make sure that plant's getting the right amount of light, airflow. Like, it would just be so much anxiety for me. But like I said, if you like to buy expensive plants, that's fine. I mean, I don't know. I spent like $150 on a plant, and I thought that was a lot. So expensive can be relative. You could think $50 is expensive, you could think $25 is expensive, you can think $150 is expensive, or $4,000 is expensive. But expensive plants just give me anxiety. Number 13, let me just tell you, I am not a fan of other people telling me what I have to do. And this is not me being like, you know, sassy or anything, but this is my plant collection. I choose to grow my plants the way I want to grow my plants, and I choose to grow them the most simple way that I can, the most minimal way that I can. And I just don't like it when people tell me that I have to grow my plants a certain way, or I have to use a certain soil medium, or I have to buy plant shelves to bring up my plants. I want to grow my plants the way I want to grow them. This is already an expensive hobby, and if I did all the things that people said I have to do, it would be even more expensive. I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much. And I just gotten to this point where my plants don't stress me out. I'm not like super overwhelmed about my plant care routines, you know, watering, pest maintenance and things like that. Like, my plants are in a really good spot. I'm not having a lot of like crispy leaves, except for a couple of calathea. But my plants are in a good spot. I'm in a good spot, and I'm enjoying this hobby. So I just don't like when people tell me I have to do something, because I already have my own sort of routine going down, and that's the way I like it. And number 14, blooms versus no blooms. I feel like it's the same thing. Like, the plant has already used up the energy to put out the bloom. So I feel like it doesn't matter if you cut the bloom off or not. I mean, comment down below what you guys think, but I feel like the plant has already used the most energy it's gonna use putting out the bloom. So at that point, it just doesn't really matter if you cut the bloom off. I don't know. What do you guys think? But I have several plants that are blooming right now, but they're still putting out leaves. So I just sometimes I don't bother cutting off the blooms. I mean, if I get tired of looking at the bloom, then I will, but I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Let me know. And the last one is plant hovering. Hovering over your plants is going to eventually kill your plant and cause you to be stressed out. And what I mean is, if you're constantly hovering over your plant, it's going to drive you nuts. You're going to be like, is it getting enough water? Is it getting enough light? You're going to be like, ugh. Is that a bug? Is that a pest? Is that thrips? Is it spider mites? It's gonna drive you nuts. You're gonna be overwhelmed. If you do that for every plant in your collection, you are going to go nuts. And I know because I used to do this. I used to wake up in the middle of the night and I used to be like, oh, I wonder if that plant's getting enough light. I wonder if this spot's enough light. And I would move my plant in the middle of the night, and it would make no sense because there's no sunlight coming out. So how could I determine if it's gonna get enough light for the next day? And I would move it all the time. How can you tell if it's gonna get enough light and grow well if you don't leave it there for a while to see if it's actually gonna make a difference? And I would drive myself crazy. I would fill up my humidifier in the middle of the night because I'd be like, oh, my humidifier turned off. And it was just nuts. I was the most frantic about my plants at that time. And it's because I was hovering over them constantly. I was constantly poking them with the water meter. I was snapping roots because I was poking it just to make sure it had enough moisture. And I drove myself crazy, and I hurt my plants at the same time because I didn't leave them in the spot long enough to see if it was actually making a good difference, or I would move plants that were doing fine in that spot just so I could have another plant do well, and then that other plant would start to deteriorate. And so over time, plant hovering can really harm your collection and even kill some plants because you're sacrificing some plants for the good of other plants instead of just making sure you have enough space, making sure you have enough grow lights, or just leaving a plant in a place long enough to see if it's going to be happy in that spot. So I just want to just caution you, please do not try your hardest not to be a plant hoverer. It's going to drive you nuts. Your plants are going to be fine. Just check them on a weekly basis just to see, check in like a sponsor or a mentor. How are you doing today? You got green leaves. You're looking good. You're looking beautiful. Oh, what's this yellow leaf? Let's check to see if we have any pests. Just treat them like they're a client and you're just having that weekly check-in. And it just makes your plant care and maintenance so much easier. And you're just like, it's like you're talking to a friend. How are you doing today? And you're not just like a nagging nanny or, a worrying mom. So those are the opinions that I have. Let me know if you guys have similar opinions or different opinions. Let's have a discussion. And also, guys, I reorganized my living room again because Soltech sent me another light, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna put that up. So I reorganized my plants. So comment down below if you guys want to see that. I can just show you quickly how I reorganize my plants. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching my videos, liking and subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.